Hello everyone, welcome to our workshop on polishing your curriculum vitae, specifically tailoring your CV to the academic job market in STEM fields. My name is Dr. Tina Solvik and I'm the Program Manager for Graduate Career Education at UT Austin's Texas Career Engagement Office. So the learning objectives for today are to define fit from the search committee perspective, explain how search committees will review CVs for specific qualifications, define the sections that are used in CVs and how they are formatted for STEM fields, describe how to order sections based on institution type, and practice ordering sections for a mixed research and teaching institution. Okay, so our agenda for today, we're covering 4 topics. We're covering the search committee perspective if you are applying for an academic, a faculty job. We're talking about elements of traditional CV and looking at them from a STEM perspective. We're going to be talking about how you can use your CV to demonstrate institutional fit when you are applying to jobs. And then at the end, time permitting, we'll have a peer review of each other's CVs. So starting with the search committee perspective. So I want everyone who's applying to postdocs in STEM fields to be aware that we are approaching this workshop with a perspective of an academic faculty search committee, so for tenure track positions. A lot of the CV elements will apply to postdocs, but one thing I want everyone to be aware of is if you're applying to postdocs, most often it's going to be a much more informal process where the only person evaluating you is going to be the PI of the lab you're thinking of applying to. There's not going to be a search committee and as thorough of a hiring process as it is for postdocs. But this workshop will definitely be helpful with discussing the CV elements and how you order them. So for those of you who are applying to academic faculty positions, you will be engaging with a search committee. So a search committee will be comprised of several members of the department that you're applying to. Some of them will have tenure, some of them will be tenure track, and there will be a chairperson. It's important to know that your search committee is going to be very busy, distracted, and overwhelmed. They are reading potentially hundreds of applications, and so you want to make your documents very strong, very clear, very easily readable. Also, reviewers on the search committee are not going to be equally invested in the search process. It's another aspect of university service for them. And they, when they're reading your application, each person might have their own top indicators of what they're looking for in a candidate. So it can be somewhat of an arbitrary process. But what we're going to focus on most today is that everyone in that committee is going to care very strongly about fit. Specifically, will you as a candidate fit into the faculty culture that they've developed in that department in that university? So what is fit? When search committees are thinking about whether a candidate fits into the department, they're asking several questions, which I've detailed here. Is the candidate a potential colleague, so a peer, as opposed to someone that they have to mentor? So really indicating your independence and your ability to rise from grad student or postdoc to peer faculty is going to be very important in your documents. They're going to be asking if your research, teaching, and service experience complements the needs of that department. So what classes need to be taught? What kind of committees do they run? What are the research gaps that they want filled? They'll also ask, are you expressing willingness to meet the needs of the department or university? For example, research and teaching combined institutions can be very sensitive to the fact that they know a lot of their applicants are also applying to R1 institutions, and they can tell when an applicant does not prioritize applying to a research and teaching institution. They don't mention teaching or willingness to work with that student population. So think about how your documents are going to indicate, I've taught these types of classes, I have this experience, I've worked with these types of students, and I'm ready to transition and I want to transition into this type of role at your university. They're also going to be asking if your academic history indicates that you can meet tenure. They don't want to hire someone who is not going to pass tenure in a few years. And then they want someone who's enthusiastic. So enthusiastic about going to a community college, enthusiastic about going to a liberal arts college. They want to feel like their university is, you know, a place of interest for you. So the CV is going to be the most important application document according to some. So this is from a dean of the graduate division at Baylor. And he says that the CV is where he goes first. It's the first pass. Remember that people reviewing any document look before they read. They just look at it. It takes about half a second to determine if the structure makes sense and if this is something they can get through. It's surprising how many really poorly organized or messy CVs come through the application process. So what is a CV? A CV is abbreviation for curriculum vitae, which means course of life. It is a complete record of your academic history, comprising research, teaching, and service. It's organized using common section headings that we'll go through in a few minutes, and it's supposed to be a demonstration of your scholarly expertise, productivity, and trajectory. The CV is very important in the application process. It will help you get that first phone interview, but note it's just one of the many processes of, one of the many aspects of the application process, in addition to interviews, research talks, teaching demonstrations. So a CV alone will not get you the job. So when we look at how the search committee reads the CV, they're really scanning it for any of these 6 criteria. They're looking at reputation, productivity, fundability, teaching, mentoring, and service. And some institutions will prioritize some of these over others, and we'll discuss that later. So what does reputation mean? How do they understand reputation? So they're going to be looking at the name of your institution, the name of your advisor, who do you collaborate with, what awards and honors have you gotten, and your presentation history. Have you been invited to give talks? Have you been selected to speak at a national conference? And the overarching question is, does your academic background fit this institution's level of scientific reputation? So this is absolutely critical for an R1 institution. So then they also look at productivity, and they understand productivity by looking at your research findings, which are detailed in your research experience section, as well as your publication record. And they'll look at a combination of impact and frequency. And so impact could be, did you get in Nature Cell Science? And frequency could be, how are you frequently publishing every X number of years? So they're asking, can you maintain the necessary pace and volume of work at their university in order to get tenure? They're also looking at fundability. So specifically, what individual fellowships and grants have you gone to? And also, do you have experience with the grant writing process? Have you contributed to any of your advisors' grants? Looking at the question of, can you secure extramural funding to support your research at this institution? Other qualifications include teaching. So for teaching, they're looking at your experience. Have you been an instructor of record, or an assistant instructor, or a teaching assistant? What courses did you teach? What subjects were they? Do you have a lot of breadth, covering a variety of different courses in science? Or do you have a lot of depth? Have you taught the same course multiple times? They're asking, can you manage organizing and teaching a certain number of courses over the academic year? And specifically, do you have the experience teaching the courses that they need taught by this position? They're also looking at mentoring. So what's your mentoring experience? Who are the students that you've mentored, and where are they now? Are they grad students, medical students, research, industry scientists? And then also, what is their involvement and productivity in your research? Were they co-authors on any of your papers? Did they present posters? So ultimately, they're looking at, can you effectively integrate master's and undergraduate students in your research program? And then the last qualification they'll look at is service. So have you served on university committees or task forces, or helped review papers for publications? Do you have experience working with underserved and or diverse populations in STEM? And they want to know is, will you do your fair share of the service requirements for the department if you're hired?